I know. I gotta hit this little got it button telling me that it's live streaming. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Witch Please, Sunshine's Guide to the Mystical. And I'm really curious how today's topic is going to go over. I'm not going to lie on this one. I'm really curious. I'm even more so curious because I have found out from some of you listeners that you are really loving these topics. And I think one of the most interesting ones we've had so far maybe touches in this world a little tiny bit. So we're going to talk about evil today. Evil from the perspective of the witch. Okay. Um, and sitting there and I was preparing and taking my notes and everything today, and I was thinking, I was like, this is either going to be maybe a controversial topic or maybe complex, or I don't know. This feels a little bit different than some of the other things that we may have touched on. So as usual, though, I am going to go ahead and ground us in a formal definition to start, right? And so if we look up the word evil, literally EVIL, in online, the dictionary.com or whatever version that you want to use, it's going to show up that it's a noun and it's an adjective. As a noun, this is the formal definition. It's a profound immorality and wickedness, especially when regarded as a supernatural force. Okay, profound immorality and wickedness, especially when regarded as a supernatural force. The second one, as an adjective, is profoundly immoral or wicked. Okay. And so I think it's so funny that they use the word wicked. Let's look this up. I'm curious. I did look up I know the definition of moral, but I wanted to see. Yeah, it's so funny. Like talk about a secular definition. So you look up the word wicked, it's evil or morally wrong, right? Come on, dictionary. Did somebody not check this to see if you had circular logic in here, circular definitions? Yeah, too funny. So I want to break this down though, right? Because both the noun and the definition are using the word immoral. Even if we look up wicked, it's still referring to as morally wrong, right? If we're looking at it that way. And so one of my favorite classes that I took in college was actually my one of my ethics. It was a morality course. And I really, really loved this course because you start to learn that morality is a personalized thing. It's an individualized thing, right? A morality is something that's defined both personally and often as well as within a society or even culturally speaking, right? Like, so a group of individuals could get together and claim that this is like our moral truth, how what we believe, this is our common morality. But at the end of the day, it is up to the individual to choose, right? So based upon this, right, if it's everybody's individual, based upon this understanding, evil, the concept of evil, can differ from person to person, society to society, and culture to culture, right? Let me just hit this over and make sure we don't have any in this live stream, any comments or anything like that. Because I just realized that when I looked at that definition, I got off of that. Yes, I do live stream these as well as produce them as a podcast. So you can always check them out on YouTube on Fridays. So when we think about this, this is where things can get like controversial, and this is where things can get a little bit of a, maybe even a debate on it. So we think back in history, there's some things that if we were to look back in history, we'd go like, "Ooh, that seems a little evil today." That seems a little bit evil, like, right? That might not seem morally right, might feel a little morally icky. A couple examples. Once upon a time, it was not uncommon for girls or even, boys, males and females, to be married, partnered up at the age of like 14. 15. I mean, maybe even like if you even go back and you look at some of the royal families, apologize because my nose is itching. If you look at some of like the royal family, I mean, this could even have been at like 11, 12, 13, like married. And like the moment that somebody is married, there's also, you know, sometimes the expectation of bearing children. So like these children, these literal children, like who we would look at as children nowadays, being married off and expected to start raising families. Right. So we look back on that today, we may actually think that's evil or morally not, you know, cool. Um, you know, another one was bearing children with folks that within your family. Like now there are some laws depending upon where you're at. And even culturally speaking, there might be some cultures and societies that still don't have a problem with like first cousins marrying, or, you know, I mean, let's be real. There are plenty of historical facts of like brothers and sisters, right? Especially when we're talking about royal bloodlines, right? Them literally trying to make the royal bloodlines pure. And so, like, us looking back in history may actually think, you know, hey, that's evil, that's weird, that's not morally, you know, sound, morally correct. And once again, here's a little bit of controversial because it still exists in certain parts of the world. Could be, you know, women being literally subservient to men, right? That could be even looked at. Like once upon a time, women weren't allowed to read, women weren't allowed to write. I mean, here in America, women are allowed to vote, like all sorts of things. So like that whole concept, we could look back historically and say, oh, nowadays, right, we're going to look at this and say that that's morally wrong, right? We could choose to do that as an individual, as a collective society, as a culture, right? And we have made changes. I mean, once upon a time too, it was acceptable to own a slave, right? And we've now looked at that, and there are a lot of people that will, you know, agree that's evil. But there are some other folks that may not feel that way right now, right? And so there are some things that I would say are probably pretty eclectic, you know, like pretty widely accepted, right? And two of them that I thought of is like hurting children, right? I think almost every person everywhere, I can't imagine, you know, would agree hurting children, hurting anything that is unable, incapable of defending or protecting itself very well could be seen, right? Like I think, you know, pretty globally accepted. The other thing that I thought of too is I do think most cultures and societies and, you know, people, I think most would probably agree that like destroying things like natural, like, you know, going and destroying like, I don't even know. Then now my guides are kind of making me like pause for a second based upon how I was about to say this. Like destroying natural wonders, right? Like I do think that there would be a large collective, but I couldn't think. Like I really sat here for a while trying to decide this morning what some other like globally kind of accepted, you know, people wouldn't question. Uh, you know, I mean, I would think most folks would not think it's cool to like set about global pandemics, you know. And we get into here, like there are still now today things that are controversial that depending upon where you're at, people would have one opinion on whether or not it's evil versus another, right? There are still certain tribes, I'm pretty positive within Africa, that are still practicing cannibalism, right? So there are a lot of folks that would potentially cast judgment on those groups and say that they're evil, right? Even though it's part of their own spiritual or religious practices, right? There are a lot of people that look at the war and the violence and the fighting that is going on within the world right now as being evil, right? And then you think about, you like add the layer, you peel back a layer and you think about why people are actually in that war, and it's because they very well may be judging their opponent as being evil, right? There's another one that, you know, this one is a little bit of a sensitive topic, and some people, but there are folks out there that truly are going to have the moral opinion that like being gay, trans, bi, pansexual, polyamorous, whatever, like having these alternative lifestyles is evil, right? So I am not the type of individual that you ever want to get into a philosophical debate with, right? I believe in existentialism from a philosophy standpoint, meaning that I am the only individual that gets to describe my own truth, right? Truly. And so my own personal perspective on evil is that I believe it's 100% subjective. Good, bad, right or wrong is 100% up to every individual to decide. And that's across the board. I truly do believe it's up to every individual to decide. And I want to say that just because I believe that, that is my own philosophy, that is my own personal perspective on this, doesn't, and I'm not going to judge, right? I'm not going to be like, ooh, you're wrong for thinking that's wrong, or I mean, right? Or you're good for thinking that's good, like, yay, right? I'm not going to judge and cast any type of judgment on what somebody's beliefs are, what their moral standing is, or anything of that nature. But that doesn't mean I have to agree, right? Like, there are a lot of people that can probably justify a lot of the war and the violence that's going on, right? I don't have to agree with that. There are a lot of people that, and I actually don't have a stance on cannibalism or not. I can't imagine doing it. But like, that's just the thing. I don't think it's right nor wrong. I don't think there's a moral debate there. I think that's up for somebody to choose. But like, just because I'm not going to judge or tell you that what you believe is right or wrong or anything, doesn't mean that I have to agree, right? I do still believe in sovereignty. I do believe that it's everybody's own opinion, right? And so there are a couple of things I'm going to share with you that I do feel that I find as evil. I'll put it real simply. And I like thought about this for a while, and I really think that this like probably encompasses a good majority of all, like, anything, right? And so the number one, absolutely number one thing that I find evil is anything. This can be a human, this can be a entity, this can be a corporation that exerts power over human beings. I'm going to say that again. This is any entity, human, corporation, anything that exerts power over another human being. I do not believe, my own personal belief, my own personal philosophy is that I do not believe that it is of morally high standard to exert power over other humans, taking away their own sovereignty. I believe individuals that choose to exert power, to choose to position themselves put themselves in a position of power, that choose to allow, to hide behind whatever it is, whatever mask, whatever illusion that they aren't, and still exert power. There is, yeah, I would say, like, stamp of nothing more evil in this world, right? And the reason why is that doing so can lead to abuse. It can lead to that violence. It can lead to that war. All of this. I really don't know that there is much else that I find evil in. There's a couple other things that I did list in here. And I do believe, as I stated, I think destroying the beautiful thing, the beauty in our world, is also an evil act, right? So somebody that intentionally robs someone of being able to see beauty, destroying landscapes, destroying natures, destroying buildings. This could be even a matter of, and I'll just say this is a really, really weird one to be popping into my head. But it's around, I'm recording this, it's right before Thanksgiving. I've been thinking about the movie Elf. It's my favorite Christmas movie. And the scene at the end where the guy's like, all like, if you leave this place, you're not gonna have a job, right? And so there's an exertion of power right in there, but like, he was trying to destroy the beauty of the relationship that man had with his son, right? In that. So not only was he trying to exert power over this man, but he was also trying to destroy. So like beauty in the world can show up in many different ways. And so when, there are intentional destroying of that beauty in the world, and I don't mean like Mother Nature destroying it. I mean, yeah, that to me is another way, another thing that I find is evil. And and I teetered on this one, and I'll tell you why my ego crept in as I was writing this one. I think revenge. I think revenge is a pretty evil thing. And I teetered on this because I have myself had to like lean in and make a determination sometimes of some of the things that I do or is revenge or whether or not it's actual protection, right? Um, and so, like here's the thing that I came back with as I was kind of sitting in this is like, I also don't say that like there's nothing once again wrong with being, like stepping into any of these things. Like I don't believe in a lot of judgment of other people. I really don't. Right. But I do think that revenge can be a very evil thing because people are choosing to stay and remain within the past, right? They're not actually they're claiming and seeking, to like they're like a false healing, right? So I just think about, very commonly, and it's interesting that they're painting this picture with me right now, how potentially another entity, another energy outside of yourself could be exerting power over you and causing you to be distracted and thinking like revenge is going to make you better. Right. And so like, I don't know, revenge to me is it is, it's just, it's never, it's evil. It's never going to serve the human in the way that they expect it to. So, of course, I've shared all of this great information. I've been chatting for quite a few minutes at this particular point about evil. And so you might be sitting here wondering now, once again, as I imagine most people do at some point in these podcasts, why am I sharing all this with you? Why should you even care? And, the first reason why I'm going to share this is because you may have people tell you that believing in this, practicing this, exploring this, doing this, embracing this, your witchy superpowers or ritual or anything, you're psychic, any of this kind of stuff, right? People may tell you, right? Or you may be wondering if any of this stuff is evil, right? I don't think it is. I personally don't think that anything that I do, that I engage in, is evil, right? I mean, I definitely could use these gifts and these skills to do evil, but I choose not to, right? I don't think it's evil. Once again, I believe that evil is a personally defined thing and only you get to decide if it is. So if you want to go ahead and claim that something is evil, it is for you. But that doesn't mean it is for anybody else, right? The other thing too is it might not be this, right? But as you're exploring, heading down this path, you may stumble across things. You might encounter things that you think are evil. And so once again, in that same preface, if you think something is evil, it is for you, right? That's your choice to decide. The thing and the fact of the matter is, and I'm hoping if you've listened to any of these, you're going to hear this now. You're going to hear it forever repeated because this, woo, shaky, shaky, hit my desk. This is your magic, right? I want you to know that only you get to define these things. If you want to go ahead and practice Satanism, that's up to you to decide. That's up to you to define. That's up to you to say whether or not it is the evil. I mean, maybe you want to practice it because it is. You think it is. And you're like, I am the big evil magic practitioner. I don't care, and I'm not going to judge you for it, right? That's your life to live, not mine. I might not hang out in your circle. Maybe I will. I don't know. Right? It's up to you to decide, right? And the fact of the matter is, though, not everyone's going to agree with you. If you decide to become a Satanist, not everybody's going to agree. Some people are going to label you as evil, just like I'm a witch. Some people are going to label me as evil. regardless of whether or not they know me, right? The other thing too is as you go ahead and you get to decide and define these things, please understand that just because you and your little existential self has decided that something is good or bad or right or wrong or evil or whatever of that nature, doesn't mean that like you're going to be around other people that agree. Well, that's cool. But like you could also be an asshole without knowing it, right? Like, so you could think that like tossing your garbage out the car while you're driving on the highway is not an evil thing, when in actuality, I do think that's a pretty asshole move, right? Like, I mean, that's my personal opinion. I wouldn't, but, you know, some people might claim it's evil, but you could be an asshole, right? Just because you're doing something that you aren't claiming as evil doesn't mean that you couldn't still be an asshole. Okay. So just want to be that clear, right? Like you could do something and still be an asshole. So just because you claim something isn't evil doesn't mean it's not an asshole thing to do, right? Because as I said, you could be doing things that other people are defining as evil, right? Like littering. But at the end of the day, my dear friends, it is up to you and only you to decide what your moral compass is and what you believe is evil. And this is the only thing I'm going to leave you with and part you with today, right? And this is the most important thing. And I claim this, I say this, I share this often. The most important thing that you need to do in any of this is just choose. Make a decision on something, right? So if you decide that something is evil, choose that it's evil and make that a truth. Don't waver, don't question it, don't flip-flop. And I say this because once again, we're talking about the perspective or evil as a perspective of a witch. And if I'm a witch and I'm out there and I'm actively participating and doing all my magic and all this kind of good stuff, and if you have some kind of belief that you are wavering on, you are not certain of, you have one foot in one place and one foot in the other, I'm not going to lie, from a spiritual perspective, it can, depending upon the topic, be a little bit of a dangerous place to sit in. So I always tell everyone, make sure your beliefs are your beliefs and choose. I don't care what they are, just choose them and stick to them. I don't mean that you can't change them. I mean, choose them and stick to them. And when you decide to change it, then choose and decide to change. All right. Well, that's it for today, my dear friends. I'm going to go off and be on my evil little way. Because like I said, I don't mind. I'm gonna go off and be, and we might do some immoral things today in some people's eyes, right? Like I'm gonna go hang out with people that are like gay and bi, and maybe some folks that might be trans. I'm gonna do some psychic stuff this weekend and do some magic and all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, there are a handful of folks that are gonna say I'm gonna be off on my evil little way. So, with that being said, my dear friends, much love in this, like, what some might claim, little evil little heart from me to all of you. Until next time, my dear friends.